What's going on, everybody out there? It's Ron Brown, LMT, the People's Fitness Professional. We got the brother in here in the building this evening to build with us about a brother that he talks about a lot. Cheikh Ahmadou. Hold on. Let me pronounce it right. Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba.
You was on point, God. Correct
I'm on
self.
point. Okay. Just making sure. Just making sure.
Yeah.
How you feeling this evening, brother?
Man, all was good in the sight of Allah. Just finished reading
Indeed.
the book by Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba, so I got my spiritual practice in before the live stream came on. So
That's peace.
ready and
That's
lit.
peace. That's peace. I like what you got. You got the nice what we call that, a kufi.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite ones, man. I try to keep it to where that diamond is like right smack in the middle where the third eye is. I don't ever wear it off center.
Indeed.
A
Man,
little
you're
reminder.
a very interesting Muslim brother because man, I watch you on Facebook sometimes. You get real deep with numerology, if that's what you call it. I mean, you're universal. I would say you're a universal Muslim brother. Thank you. You're a universal Muslim brother. I've never seen that ever. You know what I mean? Like you say peace to the God. You know what I'm saying? You don't argue about the information. You'll go, okay, you see it that way. I see it that way too. And then you'll take us into Sufism or something like that. Like you'll take us into Islam. And that is peace right there. I love that about you. You know what I'm saying? I love that about you. It could be not only your practice, just your vast knowledge of the culture and the religion of Islam. You know what I'm saying? So I really appreciate that, brother. So now with no further ado, let's talk about Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba. Let's talk about him a little briefly, and then let's go into the poet. It is poetry, right?
Yeah, poetry. This Arabic word called Qasida, which just
Right.
what we call in English is a poem or a litany or a panegyric, something like that. He
Okay.
writes a lot of those with in accordance with topics like fiqh, just like jurisprudence,
Hmm.
aqidah, which is like your core the core beliefs of the Islamic religion,
Hmm.
tawheed, the divine oneness of Allah, adab, like ethics and morals and whatnot. And I'd say about 99% of them all rhyme or have a particular metric or a cadence to it, so that no
Really?
matter how deep they are, the way he writes them and formulates them, they're easy to remember. Because when you read some of them, they kind of come off sing-songy because they rhyme. Even if you break a line in half, it rhymes and it's at its halfway point with the end point. So the way he formulates it is like he makes it easy for people to get what would seem like real deep teachings,
Yeah.
but the way he formulates it makes it real easy to digest and sometimes easy to remember. Because sometimes I catch myself listening to some instrumentals, and one of the poems that I have by him memorized, I'll be like, this instrumental matches up with the same cadence from this one poem from Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba, and I'll be in here freestyling this poem by Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba over rap instrumentals because of how mathematically composed they are. The way it's almost like he was if rap would have been in existence in Senegal at that point in time, I think he would have been probably one of the highest MCs in the game. But
Wow.
I gotta
Okay.
pull this up.
Wow.
I
Okay.
don't know if
Okay.
anybody's ever heard of this or read it, but I think I might have sent the link to you. The essays on the life and teachings of Master Fard Muhammad.
Yes.
I know that's not Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, so like, why the brother starting there? But if anybody's ever read that book or got it, man, get back in it, because in chapter 2 is about the exact same person we're talking about today. If we get, which I'll see if I can send the link for that PDF. But in chapter 2, essays of life and teachings of Master Fard Muhammad, they give us pretty much an intro to what we're talking about. He said, Sufism is the mystical element of the religion of Islam, which is indeed true. The Sufis may be considered a special class of teachers whose responsibility is to maintain and transmit hidden and deeper knowledge contained within the Islamic scripture. Their movement, according to Nasrullah Fatimi, was expressed in outward form as a protest against the formalism of orthodoxy in Islam and gradually developed into a rebellion against the decadence, corruption, and tyranny of a Sikh materialistic society. Pause. Does that not sound exactly like what Master Fard Muhammad Pakistan came over here and gave us? Something to get us out of that exact same situation,
Right.
just over here. All right.
Yeah, yes, sir. Hold on before you continue. Sister Cat again, thank you for the $10. I really appreciate you. She said, "Truth is the only life that will save us. Truth is the only life
Um,
that will save us. Peace, peace." Now,
Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba is quoted to have said that out of all things that have existence, truth is the only thing that exists forever.
mm. Now
That is indeed true.
let's get into now. So you were building on uh uh you know Elijah Muhammad bringing us the teachings to pretty much bring us out of like mental slavery, hell, etc. Right? That's where you were going with where you were going with that. Okay, now continue.
They said there are various definitions of this word Sufi, which I think we went over in a previous video, which have different origins. Sufis trace the word back to an Arabic root meaning purity, like brethren of purity. Sound
Hmm.
familiar? All right. Referring to one who is a pure in heart or one of the elect. And others say it means wool, et cetera, because they always wear these long wool cloaks and garments and whatnot. But if we go a little forward to get to the African connection, to make the connection to Master Fard Muhammad, they mentioned that one of the greatest Sufi mystics of all time was the African philosopher Dhul Nun al Misri from the 9th century AD. And although he was born a Nubian slave, he became a model of a Renaissance man because he was well versed in philosophy, law, literature,
Mm.
alchemy, ancient Egyptian history, and hieroglyphics. One of the most important things I guess they might have used him for. But his writings showed a very deep knowledge of what we now call Egyptology. And people look at Dhul Nun as the first Sufi tube, and a tube is an Arabic word that means like the pole or some a person or being that a thing stands on. So the foundation of Sufism coming out of Egypt stands on what Dhul Nun possessed in the 9th century is what he's saying, which is true.
Mm.
Now, I say the Sufis by Idris Shah, they note that Dhul Nun founded this dervish order of builders. Hmm. Dervish order of builders, you don't say, some builders, which had some significant impact on present day Masonic orders. Now, in Senegal, the most famous Sufi was Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba. To bring it all together, Ahmadou Bamba founded this Murid Brotherhood in 1886, and it's a branch of the Qadiriya Sufi order, which started a little bit further up in Morocco, Mauritania area. And it started out in the same way. It started out as a rebellion against the orthodox practices of Islam because they were restrictive to the Africans and their indigenous thought processes, rights, beliefs, and practices and whatnot.
Hmm.
And Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba took Islam and gave them the inner dimensions of it. So on the outside, you can go to Senegal and it looks just like a Muslim country,
Mm.
but 90% of the people around you are in some Sufi order, some Sufi fraternity, some Sufi brotherhood of some sort. Even though they might look and carry on like Orthodox Muslims, they know how to whip up a talisman like nobody's business, you know.
Mm.
But he emphasized that the spiritual work is the most important part of the Islamic journey, not so much as the strict, rigid. I have to go make these prayers. I have to do this way. I have to do it that way. he mentioned that the spiritual part, the inner dimensions are more important because now the person has a connection with Allah. He's just not doing it because the imam that drives a nice car said that I have to do it. He's doing it because he feels a connection and he feels motivated and energized. So he did that in a way that it doesn't really devalue the importance of Orthodox Islam and prayer and whatnot, because they still pray, they still go to the mosque and Ramadan and all that. But he he mentioned this saying to work as if you would never die and pray as if you would die tomorrow, which kind of puts you between a rock and hard place, right? Like pray as if you're gonna die tomorrow and work as if you're never gonna die. So it makes them focus on the inner aspects. So to work, he taught is to pray. Right? We we get taught it's all right. You can make your Hajj to Mecca. By all means, please do so because every good Muslim is supposed to. But in most Sufi orders, especially with Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, he emphasized the inner dimensions. So he teaches us about the importance of the heart. That's where the true Kaaba is. So we not taught to make the Hajj to Mecca, but more so the Tuba where Bamba is buried, not to make it seem like we're venerating Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, but out of a respect for the teachings that he gave, because he's the one that told us that the true center of Islam, the true Kaaba, is right here in the heart. This is where I'm
Mm.
supposed to circumambulate, supposed to keep this guy clean, make sure I don't
That
get
sounds
poked
like
in it
more
again.
science to me.
Right. You see, it all lines up.
Right.
So like all of them brotherhoods from like Sufi orders, they form around a similar leader. They call him a sheikh. Whereas over here we had Master Fard Muhammad or Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Noble Drew Ali, similar Islamic titles, kind of reappropriated in a Western way. But all of them kind of gave us a similar degree of these same teachings. Like yeah, you can be a Muslim by all means. Yeah, go to the mosque, pray, get good with your practice, but don't forget about the inner dimensions because you can have the whole Quran memorized and you can make your 5 daily prayers every day and you can own the biggest gas station on the south side. But if you treat black folks like crap and they come in there, it don't matter. If you made all your prayers a day, if you're treating another human being like crap, you know.
Right. For
So
sure.
the inner dimension makes sure that people don't do that as Muslims, along with the other everyday things that they do.
That's a fact. So now let's talk about the poems, right? So well you were talking, I wanted to give a little brief history about Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba. If you want to maybe expound a little bit on his history and what is drawing you to him so much? Because we have so many different great teachers and things. What made you pick up his teachings? You know.
It was a odd conjunction in life. I was going through Islam and had just bumped into Sufism. A brother at the masjid, Dawood, had introduced these Sufis and this deep mystic poetry to me. And I had never heard of it at that point. But at that same point in time, I was doing my ancestry, family tree building and whatnot, going back 5 and 6 generations. And on my mother's paternal side is where I found an actual Senegalese connection,
Mm,
like some Wolof ancestry, some Serer, Mandinka, some Fulani ancestry because of how we get mixed over here. And
mm,
right around that same time, I'm bumping into, all these Persian and Arab Sufis. And I have this thought like, well, where are all the black Sufis at? And type that in online. And that's when I bump into Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba. And, I don't know, I hate to like sound like an average black person, but it was like, was on and popping from there because I saw him presenting something that was still Islamic, still Islam, but it was deeper than anything that the Orthodoxy had to offer. And it also wasn't so strict and rigid that it demonized and talked down about any traditional like African traditional practices, spiritual traditions and things like that. Because if I go to the mosque with these big prayer beads on, man, they already gonna know. They already gonna start whispering to themselves like Sufi order and yada yada, and they do all that extra stuff. But it's still Islam. You know,
You know what's
Allah
funny?
says in the
I was on a plane with a Islamic brother. He was reading the Quran, and he started crying and stuff like that because someone he knows just passed away, and I was like, telling him, it'll be okay, just kind of consoling him a little bit, and then we get to talking about Islam, and then when I spoke up, when I spoke upon Sufism, he looked at it. It was like it was Sufism is like whatever. It's like
Like an
it's like
innovation, yeah.
yeah,
Most of the orthodoxy kind of look down upon it because it's like I'll speak from their perspective when they say like, oh, they add on a lot of extra stuff to the
yeah,
practices, and they do a lot of things that aren't a part of the practices and the sunnah of the prophet and whatnot.
mhm,
But you remember how we mentioned last time that we'll if I would have been there, I could have took that and then quoted a Quran verse in Arabic just to see how he would have accepted it, right? Like right there in that same very moment, for him to look at you and be like, "Oh, Sufis, they do all that zikr, and they have them big old long prayer beads. Why do they sit there and do all those long prayers over and over?" You just turn around and tell them, "Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi, ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Labbaika rabbi," which is barely Allah and his angels send blessings or send prayers upon the prophet. So sending prayers upon the prophet or mantras or words of power, things of that nature. Oh, you who believe, send prayers upon him also in abundance. And that's straight from the Quran. So if the Quran's telling me to do my mantras and prayers in an abundance, like not to stop at a particular number, why they just deal with 99? And the Quran says, keep on praying. Like the Bible says, pray without ceasing. It don't tell you a specific number to pray to. This
right.
tells you to pray, have a spiritual practice, because the world is crazy out there. We
Oh
got a
yeah,
spiritual base.
for sure. Now this brother Rondo Ellisworth uh says Tasa Wolf. Well, I don't know what that is. You know what that word is?
Oh, same same
Like
thing. Tasawwuf
Sufism.
is like the Arabic word for what we call Sufism. Like if you
Got it.
look in the middle of it, the SAWUF, that's where we get the Sufi from. If kind of
Ah,
forcing it back into Arabic. Tasawwuf is like the act of or being a Sufi, and a Sufi is one who practices tasawwuf. But yeah, he's spot
okay.
on. It's the general understanding of Islam before. I like how you worded that, certain power bases. We won't talk about the Abbasids and the Umayyads and the Ottomans, by the way. But a previous teacher told me that there had to have been an inner dimension for the outer dimension to form around it, just like how we were created, right? We're in triple darkness, and then this little fleshy lump forms and starts to beat out of nowhere, right? And then the body forms around it. So, like
Mhm.
that fleshy lump, that heart where it all starts at, that's Sufism or Tasawwuf. And then the body that forms around it is Islam. So, he's spot on. It had to have been there in order for there to have been a structured form of it in existence.
I like how you put that. So you said this fleshy form that basically came out of nowhere, quote unquote, right? And then the flesh was formed around it, and that flesh is Islam.
That's a little allegory because, like, Sufis, just like Jesus and a lot of the other prophets, they're wordsmiths. It was one of the things they mentioned in that book about Master Farah Muhammad in the next chapter, which is why, like, sometimes they mention some people can look at some of the lessons from like Sufism and from certain Western traditions and can only see them at the surface level because of how they're worded. They look like they're supposed to be read just that way, you know, memorized just that way and regurgitated just that way. But
Mhm,
if you look at the supreme wisdom and go through all the chapters, you realize everything has a particular number in each particular chapter.
mhm,
If that ain't Kabbalistic, bro, I don't know what is. So each chapter has a certain amount of numbers in it, and each of them certain numbers equate to an alphanumeric pattern. Also, if you were to read them or figure out the pattern all in order, there's probably a hidden message within the numbers. If just because they're numbers right now, if they would be flipped into their numerical format, you could figure out that it might be a hidden message just within the numbers without even reading what he wrote in the book.
mm. You know what? Now you're gonna now you got me to thinking. So
And that's one
okay.
thing I love about Bumba, man, because that's how he writes. Like, I'll see if I can pull up an example a little later on, but he writes his poetry in what's called an acrostic. So not only do they rhyme, and then they explain deep concepts in a condensed manner. He'll take the title of a poem like Al Baraka, the blessing, for example, and it's like a 8-line poem, but he'll use the first letter of each letter of the title of the poem, like ba, ra, ka. So the
Mm.
first line, the third line, fifth line, and the seventh line will all be those letters. The first line's a B, second line will be a R, the third line is a K, and so forth with the H. And he would use those letters to start the sentence. So in some cases, you can read his poetry from right to left or left to right, and also vertically up and down if you know that certain letters at the beginning of each odd numbered line all spell a word together. And I'm pretty sure that if Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba is mentioned in chapter 2 of Essays on the Life and Teachings of Master Fard Muhammad, that a lot of the wisdom we got, whether it be the NOI, whether it be 5%, whether it be the Moorish Science Temple, Black Peace Stones, it don't matter, can also be studied in a similar way if we pay a little bit of extra attention to the numerical order, if there's any sub numbers, how many numbers appear in a particular chapter, what letter equates to that particular number. You know, there might be something hidden that is, not really taught out loud in the book because it had to be written in such a way to where the true teachings are hidden, but enough is given so that the people are able to dive into it and hopefully find it themselves. And what's that? Abjad. That right
Mm.
there, that's it. That's spot on. That's the essentially the Arabic equivalent of what people know as gematria. Like the A is a
Okay.
one, the B is a two, C is a three, but that same system in Arabic. It's just this is just like a Muslim to take something and blow it up. I don't mean to make that a joke, but the system works like three different ways with Abjad. But for the intro with Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, he was uh he was born in 1853 in a family of judges and marabouts or griot. And a marabou is and a griot is like a keeper of sacred wisdom in West Africa. Uh, they have Qadri Sufi scholars on his father's side, the Qadri Sufi order from Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani from Northern Africa. I believe he's Algeria. And his mother's side from Tijani Sufi scholars who have a prominence in Senegal and Nigeria. The a marabou, like you say, is a Muslim saint or a holy man, and a griot is a keeper of oral and sacred and written tradition. But he kind of emphasized all of those into one with how he wrote. Now, he was born around the time of, let's say, Sheikh Anta Diop would have been a very, very young child around this time in history. If anybody's ever heard of like Sheikh Anta Diop,
Yeah.
Sheikh Anta Diop was actually a, the adopted son of Sheikh Ibrahim Fall, who was one of the best disciples of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba. So
Oh
even Sheikh
wow.
Anta Diop has a background in Sufism in West Africa because most don't know because it blew my mind when I figured it out. Uh, Sheikh wasn't his first name, just not now. I know Sheikh is a title you get, going through the degrees and stuff. Anta isn't even his first name. Anta is the name of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba's older brother, who Sheikh Anta Diop trained under, and it's also the name of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba's father. So he was given Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba's father's name as a blessing after going through the system. So Jope is literally all he kind of has left. I hate to say it like that, but Jope is his clan name, but Sheikh means he's a straight up Islamic and Sufi scholar. And Anta makes his connection with Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba's older brother and his father because they both carry the same exact name. Blew my mind because the people in Senegal know who they are, because if you go to Sheikh Anta Diop University, there's a big statue of him on the outside, right, in a pure Muslim country. But on the outside of his statue, they're the cartouches of all the pharaohs that he did all of the scientific work on to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they were black during
Mm.
that time frame in history when the Egyptologists were trying to paint them white. But if you try to put that in another Muslim country, the statue will get knocked down because at first it's a statue, it's a depiction of a person, which is haram in Islam, right? And then you have the cartouches of these black pharaohs around the statue, which is also a image that depicts something that's also haram in Islam. An Arab country wouldn't have that, right? But the Senegalese do because they understand, they know where they came from, right? But they also know that the system that they practice that we call Sufism still has fringe aspects of Kemetic sciences in it too. So they don't trip over the fact that Sheikh Anta Diop has a statue out there with Kemetic pharaohs' names around it on the outside. Some of them can probably explain those hieroglyphs.
So would you say that Islam has its hierarchy and its own like trainings and systems to, get titles or give people titles such as sheikh and etc.?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I had
You
no
can
idea,
see it.
brother.
You can see it sometimes in the masjid, like it's used as a term of endearment, like, "What's up, bro, man? What's up, homie?" Every now and then, you'll get like a "Assalamu alaikum, imam," but the person that's trying to shake my hand know that I'm not an imam. They just know I read Quran a lot, or, they always see me reading Quran, so they'll call me imam as like a term of endearment or, kind of a little joke. Or if they know I try to study a little deeper and, still play it safe every now and then, it's a "Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh," "Oh, wa alaikum salam." It's just a, kind of something to say, but they know. That's why they say it. Like, I see something in you, like, you doing something we usually don't do in here. You're doing a
Mhm.
deeper practice than anybody else in the mosque is doing right now. Like, a little something.
Mm.
Let me shake this bro hand and grip him up real quick and see what he do with his thumb. And it blew my mind the same as you, man, to realize that it kind of works the same in there. What's verbalized and said backwards is different. Of course, they come from Arabic, but a lot of the stuff you might see over here in situations like that line up exactly what was done on that side.
Got you. We this is another who's Bay File. What's that person?
By fall, by is that's the disciple of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba I mentioned that adopted Sheikh Anta Diop. By Fall or Sheikh Ibra Fall, he married Sheikh Anta Diop's mother in the Sufi group that was born from under him. They call themselves the Bai Fall, which is still based in Senegal, still stem from the teachers of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, but they embody one of the greatest disciples of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba and take the name of that disciple as the name of that particular branch of the order.
So what would be the difference between Islam in Senegal and Islam in, let's say, in an Arabic country?
Glad we still got the word by follow up because that's a perfect example. Because in an Arab country, you won't see people missing daily prayers. But if you were to go to Senegal, there'll be a particular group of people that you probably don't ever see go to the mosque, and the by fall are those particular groups of people, the ones that probably never go to the mosque. There's some that do pray, but they get way into the inner dimensions like that. My work in service is a form of prayer teaching from earlier that they pull from the Quran. They expound on that and can make connections with certain hadiths that mention like, oh, if so and so builds a masjid or a mosque for the glory of Allah, he gets the blessings for every person that prays in a different spot in that mosque. So those by far are the ones that are building the mosque that everybody's praying in. They're the ones doing the work in the community service. So there's some that need to get built. They're the ones that get called on when the Orthodox and some of the other Sufi orders are fasting during Ramadan, the Baifal are the ones that are cooking the food for the other ones to break their fast with. So they're, I won't say they're outside of Islam, because to an Orthodox Muslim it looks like they are, but they've they've essentially just transcended the orthodoxy. I've heard some say like, and hope nobody takes this as a form of disrespect, but some said that the 5 daily prayers are for people who forget Allah and it can be reminded. Like, you
Oh
pray
wow.
5 times a day because you were doing something at 2:45 you probably shouldn't have been doing. So this next prayer starts at 3:13, brother. So go ahead and get yourself back straight. Get back in line. But for those that don't forget Allah, like the by far kind of build the mind and the character to be like, there's no point in praying. Like,
Wow. Whoa, whoa. Okay. That is
I don't mean for
interesting.
it to come out like that, but like there's a story of a disciple noticing that about this Sheikh Ibrahim, and that he doesn't pray. So he goes running back to Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, and then he tells him like, "Hey, Sheikh Ibrahim, like, why is he not praying? He telling everybody he's a Muslim, but like he's not praying." And Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba knows why, because just by fall and Sheikh Ibrahim reached a station to where like they're just beyond. That's kind of the only way you can describe it. They're just beyond all that, like surface levelism, orthodoxy. They're beyond all that. So Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba tells this guy, "All right, so go back to Sheikh Ibrahim and tell him that I told him to start praying." So this guy runs back to him and tells him that Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba told you to start back praying. And Sheikh Ibrahim throws his hands up and says, Allahu Akbar, and he starts making prayer after prayer after prayer after prayer, non and stop in the story. Like, started praying, tapped in, and did not stop. When he got done with a prayer, he said Allahu Akbar and started over again. And this frightened the guy that told him this. So he goes running back to Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba. It's like, I told him what you said, but he just started praying and praying and praying, and he won't stop. So Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba tells him like, this is why the Bifal don't pray. Like, they're constantly in remembrance of Allah. You gonna plug them into a source like that? That what's reality to a person when they're constantly in remembrance of Allah, and you plug them directly into a way that you can draw on force and source and power from God? He won't build the mosque if we let him start praying. So the fact that they're doing all this work in community service and doing all the things that the others can't do is a form of prayer, because those things are also prescribed in the Quran. So now run back to him and tell him I told him to stop praying,
Mm.
which he does.
Now, the by file, I like this subject here. The brother says Rondu says they wear bright colors too.
And I love the meaning behind it too. If anybody ever has time to look these two brotherhoods up in Senegal, the Murid and the Baifal, it's like, if we look at it from like an old school Sufi perspective, it's like the path of sobriety and the path of intoxication. Like, not drunk intoxication, but like you are wrapped up, you're caught up in divine remembrance of Allah, to where certain Orthodox practices just don't do it for you anymore. You have to dive deeper. So you'll see a lot of the Murid in Senegal wearing all white, solid colors and whatnot, because of that singular divine focus. But with the by fall, they wear a lot of bright colors, patchwork, and whatnot, because of that same level of remembrance. They see that same essence, that same light from the people who wear all white, but they see that from all other different perspectives. So, like how you were saying earlier, like kind of universal. The bifal are probably like that because they're universal. They're still Muslims. I wouldn't dare tell one of them, "Oh, bro, you're not making prayer. You're not a Muslim," because it, I'll be the first to say it. They're definitely way more universal than me. They understand the Quran at a level that I can't comprehend, probably.
It says, I'm reading this here. Senegalese Muslims believe that hard work is the way to heaven. Hard work, and they're just working. Just like as you
It's
said,
working.
as you said earlier, they would be the ones that build the mosque and make the food for the people after fasting for Ramadan, right?
Indeed, almost kind of like how we get taught over here, like Elijah and Master Fard Muhammad taught us the importance of getting ourselves some land over here too. But you got to work to be able to get the land. When we get the land, we got to work to be able to maintain the land. So there's connections for days. It's I think from the Senegalese perspective, they come off a little bit more orthodox looking because of the dress. How they carry themselves and whatnot. But
They
the
look like
inner dimensions, the
Rastas right here.
practice.
They look like Rastafarians.
Right.
What do you say about that? Because I'm looking at something now. They look like Rastas. They have dreadlocks and
There may be a hidden connection because the Bifal are also pretty big in the music industry over there. Like their music industry probably ain't as ain't the same as big as ours over here, but 9 times out of 10, if you see a Senegalese person with dreadlocks with a microphone in front of them, he's a Bifal. They're real industrious.
hmm.
So
Yeah, I can
that's how they
see
take
that.
that work. That work is blown up into a different perspective and a different dimension. So now they take that same work that this one would have done to build a mosque, and they take their teachings, they take their ethics and morals, they take all their inner dimensions, even some of their deep teachings, and they put it in their song lyrics. Yeah.
Mhm.
So not only are people listening to some good sound and vibrational music, they're also listening to some music that has the essence of some of these Sufi teachings encoded in it also, the same way as Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba did with writing his poetry, like finding a way to get the message to people. If people don't want to read a book, I'm gonna write a song and make the song sing-songy and catchy. And I'm gonna make the song about focusing ourselves back on what we need to do as a people, or donating to the needy, helping the down and out, donating to shelters and whatnot. Topics like that. It's
Right.
always included in their songs.
So can you give me an example of the song now?
Let's see. If you go to Ligio, Lidiop, he has quite a few. What's the other one? Oh, Zion. Yeah, Zion. And if not Zion, probably Ja Love by Ligio. As in that one he uses a couple different versions of praise God in the song lyrics in the chorus. So you'll hear him say like Alhamdulillah, praise Allah, praise God, praise Jah, things like that throughout the song. And he's by far straight from Senegal, but every now and then you'll catch a Bible verse thrown out every now and then, or you'll catch him big up a reggae artist every now and then. Every now and then he'll flip from English to French to Wolof, all in the same exact song. But if it wasn't for Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba already have written poetry like that, he probably wouldn't have had the motivation to do the same thing in song form.
Wow. Okay. So now poems, I think I see it here now. I don't know, just to give me a copyright strike. I doubt it though. This?
Yeah, that's in my Wahibul Nafi. Yeah, I have that book. That's actually one of the Qasides or one of the writings from Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba. Yeah, Wahibul Nafi fi Madai Shafi, or the useful gift that brings healing. Yeah.
So can you I'm trying to find an example of these poems here.
Let's
Trying to find
see. If you go to Qassida lyrics, which is Qassida, Qassida lyrics. Probably one of my favorite channels in regards to the poetry because they'll upload the Arabic for those that can read the Arabic, and they transliterate the Arabic on screen for those that can't read the Arabic. They could still kind of try to read along and whatnot. Let's see.
Now, with these poems, how do you use these poems? Do you use it to raise your own vibration? Do you use it just to listen, or do you listen? Do you use it to like help you with your studies? What's the purpose of the poems?
Depending on the poem, I guess you can say some are multi-versatile, but the majority of his are all prayers on the prophet. But he does have some that are like prayers of protection and whatnot. Like
Ah,
A'udhu billahi minash shaitani. That's the name of a poem, but that phrase means I seek the protection of Allah against the accursed Satan or the accursed shaitan. But the way he writes the poem, it comes off poetic, it comes off sing-songy. But if we were to like break down like word by word in each line what each word means with context and bring it over into English, shit, I think I gotta go to a couple of lines here in this.
so besides the bifile in the what'd you say, Madrid or not Madrid, Memorid.
Um, Murid.
Morid. Beside the Morid and the Bifal, what other Sufi groups you would, put in the kind of like the same category?
From that part of the world, the Tijani, Tijani, the Tijani Sufi order. They're they're big in Senegal also, but you'll catch the largest portions of their movement a little bit further south. I mean, like Guinea, on down to Nigeria, not much further south than that. But they also traced themselves back to, I don't know if Ahmed Tijani was a quote unquote Arab or not, but he was from Algeria, the supposed founder of the order. But the guy that order is named after didn't really found it per se. It was founded by a African guy from Guinea, El Hajj Umar El Futu Hall. He went and studied up under that Sufi teacher after went to take his Hajj to Mecca, and he came back to West Africa with the Sufi teachings. So
Mm,
other than the Bifal, the Murtadia, and the Tijani, those are the main three I focus on, only because not to down any others, but when I look at them, I see people who look like me. You know,
mhm.
when I look at them, or even if I'm around, I don't feel alienated or left out, or other than the fact that sometimes some only speak Wolof. I don't know Wolof, but other than that, I don't feel different. I don't feel like I need to be any less of a person who's into African traditional religions to be around them just because I'm a Muslim. You know, I don't have to tuck my talismans, because Muslims would be like, "Oh Lord, talisman, that's black magic." Like, nah, it's protection for people like you. Right.
Right. So in Sufism they use talismans, you're saying.
Mm, definitely.
Okay. Okay.
Definitely.
So
Almost about the
now
same as the stuff in the Kabbalah. It's just done from an Arabic perspective and point of view in Quran versus you using Arabic is used, but some of the same formulas.
so this would be like into Yoruba, not Yoruba, but occult science, Yoruba, and yeah. Well, I'll keep saying Yoruba, so that's the word. So let's get keep with that then. Yeah, so like
Nah, I
Yoruba.
mean that's a solid connection too, because
Yeah, yeah.
with what they do, you can find the same thing in Sufism, like with the Yoruba and Ifa. They'll do divination and draw the lines, one line, two lines, with one dot and two dots in the sand to determine the Odu and do divination. That's geomancy. But that exact same thing is done within Sufism. It's just not talked about a whole lot. You know? It's just I'm not gonna say it's kept hush hush. It's just kept until the disciple reaches a level to where they can, get into it. 'Cause
So yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
so no, I was gonna say just because if not, sometimes some of those things can be a little bit too deep for someone if they're still orthodox minded. You kind of have to get, I don't want to say broken away from the orthodox mind, but a person would have to be trained to be more susceptible to understanding deeper truths and realities than just the surface level of orthodoxy before you get into stuff like talismans and whatnot. Like the cover of my last book, that's a straight up talisman.
That's
It's
your
a
book
three by
there.
three talisman, and each of the squares is a particular number. And the way if a person were to use that to make a particular talisman period, they would start off with number one and enter a code in number two, enter a code in number three, number four, number five, six, seven, eight, and nine. But it's all I don't mean to dispel it all. Like some look at it as straight magic. Like if you enter certain signs and symbols and magic squares or certain numerical orders, you can literally, imbue certain angelic forces and create a talisman. But to simplify it, like what it is just a harmonious arrangement of numbers. If I add all three of those rows up, they'll all equal the same number. If I add them all straight up and down, they'll all equal the same number. And there's only one way for numbers to be arranged in a 3 by 3 square for them to all equal a particular number. So it's just a mathematical science. But when occult is infused with that mathematical science, sometimes things can get a little deep.
Now, let me ask you this. What do you say to people who say angelic forces don't exist?
To each his own, because I try to look at it a little bit deeper than like what is described as over here, because English ain't that descriptive. I'm figuring that out studying Arabic nowadays, because the way you can break down one Arabic word and it takes a sentence to describe this Arabic word. I don't know many English words you can break down, and it takes that much to describe what that word means in English. It takes a lot more to describe what a word means in a foreign language than it does in English, it seems. But again, like not to dispel it, but sometimes I think shock value can be the best teacher. Because if we look at somebody like Manly P. Hall, like somebody like super occult like him, and like the secret teaching of all ages, when it gets into like embryology and the study of the inner workings of the human body and what each of the particular organs on the inside of the body part does in correlation with its religious equivalent in like biblical stories and whatnot. The angels are just different perspectives that the mind is able to perceive based on how many neural pathways that are connected from the mind stretching its own tensile ability. So the angel is just it's an angle. It's just another perspective from the mind to be able to see and perceive a thing. I know it can probably be explained a different way from another occult system, but I'm not one of the ones that kind of believes in like angels with wings flying around and whatnot. There's always something deeper than what is described in the book. Because
Yo, you got to break that down one more time, brother. Yo, you got to say that one more time because I was thinking the same thing. I was
yeah,
thinking the same thing, like the Western world makes everything like I would say Western science, right? Or I would say Western world. The Western world will push spookism and then turn around and say that's spookism. You know what I'm saying?
right.
Like, so how did you explain that again? Like what's angels to you?
And the Manly P. Hall, sorry for cussing, Manly P. Hall fucked me up because if it weren't for him, I don't think I would have gotten as deep into Sufism as I did. Because bumping to Manly P. Hall a little early on the journey, but to see him describe like embryology or how certain body parts function, and then he overlays those pretty much everything is all like Rosicrucian science, but how certain body parts function in correlation with certain biblical or religious stories, that the angels were angles or different viewpoints, different perspectives that the brain is able to achieve, neural pathways that are able to connect to make connections within the mind. So now there's a new solid connection in the brain that's able to work. You know, for somebody that's like, oh, bro, that's spookism. Like, I'll just, for just deflate it and be like, yeah, man, Lee P. Hall said it ain't nothing but your own brain, bro. If you can't get it, then that's you. you know,
Right. Right.
it's all if they want to get occult with it, like it's either all solar, stellar, lunar, or something to do with the human and the human body. So that
Indeed.
gets rid of all of the spooky stuff because there's definitely stars, there's definitely a sun, there's definitely a moon, and there's definitely a a human body right here. So ain't nothing spooky about that stuff.
Right. Now, how do you reach those levels to where you can basically take your mind or brain to another level to where you could start to open up different pathways to see things that the average person can't through meditation, prayer, and things like that?
Mhm. Definitely. I can bounce back and say it's definitely a lot of the teachers from Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba. He wrote poem Masalik of Jinan, The Pathways to Paradise. And in a few places in it, he'll give like some spiritual practices, like oh, you who believe, it will behoove you to recite Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim 21 times before you go to bed. Reciting Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim 21 times before going to bed is like he says described as a form of spiritual protection for any like evil or demons or nightmares and things of that nature that may come and hurt or harm a person. So if a person believes, and stuff like that, it will probably be described like that. But from science of the mind perspective, it's like, no, before I drift off into consciousness, the last thing my mind is thinking about is something from a higher reality, something spiritual, something deep. So I'm not going to sleep worrying about what I'm gonna do tomorrow, Lord, how I'm gonna feed these kids, Lord, I gotta get the oil change in the car. I went to sleep with something spiritual, something deeper. So not to deflate it, but it can always be explained in a way to where the person's like, "Oh, I'm just making myself not trip." That's why I ain't had no nightmare in a long time because I try to say a little prayer or something before I go to sleep. And the
Right.
last thing I think of be something, spiritual or something deeper than the crap going on outside.
The actual fact. So now I want to go into so the hidden masterpieces of Sufism Islam. We're already going into that right now. Can you give me an example of maybe okay, coming from the 5% nation, I don't know if any 5%ers are on right now. Um, but 5% is the ones that I've been around, some of them. Um it's like anything that can't be that's basically the science of the teachings, right? Anything that can't be shown and proven is not reality, right? So prayer isn't something that is done, and it's not a practice in the 5% nation, right? Prayer is like looked at like prayer, really? You know what I'm saying? So can you give me examples of the benefits of prayer, and who would you be praying to?
Snap. I was just reading this before pages past the perfect example. Boom. In a hadith reported by Suleiman bin Suraj, it says that I was sitting with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when two men began to argue and curse at each other, and the face of one of them turned red, and the veins of his neck were swollen from immense rage. So the Prophet said, I know of a phrase that if he were to say that heartfeltly, his rage would vanish. And that
Mm.
phrase is, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, or I seek refuge with Allah from Satan the accursed. So the prophet said this to the man, and the man was still mad. So the man says, what does this have to do with curing anger? So Prophet says, and well, since anger comes from the shaitan, anger comes from the Satan, anger comes from your lower self that's inflamed right now, you should seek refuge with Allah, your higher self. Right. So it's still oriented the person to look within. So like even in that particular instance, the shaitan is the person's inflamed ego or the person's inflamed lower self that's allowed to rise up. So yeah, definitely seek protection against that. But in that case, the A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajim is looked at as a incantation or a prayer in Islam and in Sufism. But it has it has pragmatic meaning. If we don't allow it to continuously be looked at through like a super religious or orthodox lens, and we don't kind of hide the esoteric layers, because a lot of times, like the esoteric layers are what people need to make these connections. Like we need to see ourselves in the story, so we make connections. Like I
Mhm.
need to know that if I embody some of these qualities and character traits, that makes me one who possesses praiseworthy character. And one who possesses praiseworthy character in Arabic is Muhammad. Not saying I am the Prophet Muhammad, but like it means that you possess praiseworthy character. So that name is an action verb. It's an embodiable trait. You know. But
Right.
if a person's too orthodox, you say that to them, they're like, "Nah, brother, you can't do that. You can't say that. Nah, you can't say that."
Now, what is a naf?
That's the Arabic word for that the ego or lower self. So I think what we mentioned in the last one, the seven stations of the soul. So the nafs or the soul goes through seven successive stages, almost like the seven chakras in the Eastern traditions and whatnot.
Mhm.
And it in itself is still a path of purification. Like it's also like a bit of Sufism hidden within Islam. Is we'll just say like for the first chakra or this first station of the soul of where the nafs is, it's the soul that's inclined to do evil. So this person just doing wrong. They don't know why. At the second station, now it's the nafs or the soul that is self-reproaching. So now it's like, why am I doing all this bull crap, man? Like now it's starting to check self. At the third station, now it's the nafs or the soul that's inspired to do good. So now it done checked itself enough to where it's like, all right, bro, I'm done with all that back there. Now I'm gonna try to do good. And right there is the most important step because the fourth chakra is the heart. We were hitting on that earlier, right? So some say that's the hardest spot to get to because you really do have to chop off some stuff down here, you know, to be able to rise up to the heart space. But at that point, the person is the soul at peace. And Sufism, that's where Islam begins. So if the person's still attached to the ego and the lower self and they run around saying they're Muslim, you can look at him and say, yeah, nah, you ain't gonna say it out loud, but based on the person's character and actions. But now that the person's at peace, they'll start to act and carry themselves differently. At the fourth, at the fifth, it's the soul that is pleased with Allah. At the sixth, the soul that Allah is pleased with. And at the seventh is the unification. Right. So now you realize man and Allah are one. At the seventh, you're not in the body no more. You transcended and went beyond.
Got you. Got you.
So
Got
if that ego or that lower self is not purified at those first three steps and it's allowed to rise up, that's when people start acting devilish because like that hadith was saying, the ego rises up, and that ego rises up. It comes from Satan. It comes from the devil, or it is the devil. You know, like there's white devils and black devils, and Mexican devils and Chinese devils and Japanese devils.
Actual fact. That's a fact. Indeed, indeed. So, we're running out of time here. This was a great build. Man, there's so much I want to talk to you about, brother. Man, I want to talk about devils. I want to talk about shaitan. I want to talk about what is a law. I want to get in depth into these
Yeah, yeah,
words because of the way you explained angels and how that works with the brain and how exercising or I don't want to say exercising, but I would say developing certain neural pathways in the brain to be able to see certain things that you weren't able to see before, that was a great explanation, because I'm heavy into anatomy and science and things like that. So if you could, speaking from a scientific perspective and bridge the gap between the two, philosophy and science, I can grasp that. You
I'm definitely with it.
Indeed. So thank you for coming out this evening. Glad to have you on. We'll greatly appreciate you coming back on again and talk in depth about a lot of those things there. If you have anything to say, you have any handles you would like to put out there for people to find you, you can now.
I guess the camelback, because the Muslims don't piggyback off of the last thing you just said. The camelback, the Occult Anatomy of Man, short book by Manly P. Hall, probably be right up your alley, man.
Anatomy of Man.
The Occult Anatomy of Man describe some of those same inner dimensions of the human body in the way that we were describing the brain from earlier.
Got you.
And honestly, I think the Occult Anatomy of Man is a snippet from the Secret Teaching of All Ages. So if you got that bigger book, it's in there too.
Got you. All right. Thank you for coming out this evening. I really appreciate you, brother. And thank you to the chat for coming out this evening. Great podcast. We peace, Sister Aket. Thank you, Sister Aket. Rondu, peace to you, man. You need to, every time this podcast is on and we're talking about Islam, please come on, brother, because you come with the fire too, man. Peace. And let me run this commercial before I'm out of here.
Peace, family, and welcome to NYP Talk Show. This is more than a podcast. It's a conscious platform rooted in truth and culture. From Pan-African teachings, hip-hop culture, current events, health, wellness, occult, and much more. Our mission is to reclaim our narrative and uplift the African diaspora with real stories and real conversations. Support us through Super Chats, during live shows, donations on Cash App, GoFundMe, Patreon, or Buzzsprout, and by repping our official merch, available on our website and right here on YouTube's merch shelf. Every dollar, every Super Chat, every hoodie builds the movement. This is NYP Talk Show.